Hello, friends, and welcome to Weekly Witness, Texas Impact's weekly podcast designed to help mainstream Texans of faith understand the legislative process and help you engage with public policy in the great state of Texas. My name is Scott Atnip, your host and Texas Impact's Director of Public Witness, and today we're once again joined by Texas Impact policy advocate Heather Malkawi, who was recently invited to the 6th Pan-African Conference, otherwise known as Sankofa 2024. This conference is hosted about every 5 years by the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. And I don't have to tell you all that there's a lot going on throughout the world. A lot of angst at the political challenges the world is facing, but also incredible work by people of faith working for justice in their own contexts. And so we're excited to talk to Heather today about how theologians are processing, leading, and acting. Speaking of, it has been great seeing so many of you engaging your communities during this important season. I know the North Texas Faith Votes team is promoting an event August 18th. The United Women of Faith are mobilizing for their event. The Houston Faith Votes team recently held a convening in the Houston area, and Texas Impact teams are all moving forward on a variety of projects. Texans of faith are leading, and it is inspiring to see. If you want to find out how you can get involved, check out texasimpact.org, and for sure, make sure to check out the Texas Faith Votes page for tools and resources. Or shoot me an email at scott@texasimpact.org, and I'll be happy to help you get plugged in. Y'all, if you're listening to this program, I probably don't have to tell you how important the next few months will be and how important the role is for the faith community in making sure that our congregations and communities are living out our faith to ensure that everyone is doing all they can in the pursuit of justice. Texas Impact has tools for you to do that, but you're the ones who have the local connections in your local communities, and I hope we're all doing our part to work for a more just and equitable Texas. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help. All right, that's enough wind up for today, I think, so I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation with Heather Malkawi. Joining us for today's conversation is Texas Impact's policy advocate, Heather Malkawi. Heather, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
This is like the second time in about a month. We just had a conversation with you in our new staff members, new position series. I feel like maybe we'll need to change your title to regular contributor or something too. Thanks for joining us again today. But you're with us again today because you recently had the honor of attending a big conference. I know I got to see lots of it in social media and hear about it in staff meetings, but talk to our listeners about the 6th Pan-African Conference. What is it? Why were you there? Why was it important?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I just returned from the what's called Sankofa 24, Journey Back to Ghana. This is the 6th Pan-African Conference. It's a conference that's hosted about every 5 years by the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. Granted, that's a mouthful, but really kind of puts that out there. So this year there was 25 different countries that were contributing from all over Africa and the diaspora. There were 246 registered participants, and everybody was there to celebrate the 35 years of academic and activist work. So what that conference did was it brought together some of the leading minds in contemporary theology.
And how'd you get the invite?
So like we explained in the last time I was here, I just graduated from Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. And while doing a little bit of work for them, I met a professor up in Michigan from the University of Zimbabwe. We talked about, surprisingly or not, a lot of the work that we do here at Texas Impact. And so she thought that that would really fall in line and theme with the conference. So she invited me to attend and go with her.
I love that. It seems like an amazing opportunity. You mentioned in your intro there the term Sankofa, which is one that we hear often in our circles. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I love Sankofa. Sankofa is a principle. It actually originates from the Akan tribe in Ghana. And roughly it translates to retrieve or to go back and get. Now, the Akan, they believe that one should remember the past in order to make a positive progress into the future. So Sankofa is actually often depicted as a mythical bird. And this bird is shown flying forward while looking backward with what I've heard is called a precious egg in its mouth, really kind of encompassing that whole, in order to move forward, in order to fly forward, we sometimes have to look back at the past and review and seek out or pull and retrieve some of those things that may be at risk of being left behind.
I love that idea. I also love the idea that you had a chance to spend some quality time with some theologians from around the world, because it does feel that we are in a time worldwide where there's a lot going on. Tensions are fraught. People are frustrated with one another. The political realm is kind of a mess, both here and around the world. I wonder if there were any major themes that the theologians and speakers were talking about throughout the course of the conference.
Yeah, definitely. So the theme this year changed a little bit than years in the past. The theme this year was Earth, pandemics, gender, and religion.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't easily roll off of the tongue. But historically, the group's focus has been around sexuality, including concerns around violence against women and the HIV/AIDS epidemic. So this particular conference on the 35th anniversary expanded to include the effects of Earth or climate change and migration, pandemics that were sparked by the global COVID outbreak, also including gender and theology or religion, and how all of those things combine together and how they really are connected.
What kind of ways would you see those being connected? What's that look like?
So, I mean,
I agree they are. I just want to hear the perspective on it.
Well, one phrase or theme that I've said myself, but also heard a lot in the theological or religious arena, if you will, is that we're all children of God, or a God that's called many different names. And so how we treat each other, how we look at people's genders, how we treat the earth, all of those things come back and circle back to faith and circle back to how do we work with other people? How do we engage with other people? How do we engage with our planet? And all of those things really just kind of encompassing and bringing it back to the interconnectedness that we all live in.
Any speakers in particular stand out to you?
I love this. There actually were two speakers that, were moving. So there were a lot of great presenters, but two really did stand out for me. One of them was a presenter who offered an analysis of Judges 19 by equating the dismemberment and distribution of the concubine in Judges 19, the distribution of body, and compared it to the damage that we're inflicting on the earth. Now, most people are horrified by the stomach-turning depravity of the story in the Bible, in the Old Testament. But yet they never bat an eyelash at the damage that we're inflicting on Mother Earth and our fellow humans by extension. I'll never claim to be an environmental scientist. We have one of those.
Becca for that, right?
Exactly. But honestly, this comparison to a biblical reference, it provided a contextual framework of destruction that this former social worker could horrifyingly understand. Now, there was also a second presenter. This particular one is not only a theologian, but also an activist in Kenya. She was considered to be a rising star in the circle because of the work that she's doing, not only academically, but also in her community there in Kenya. The work that she does is actually very, very dangerous because of the constant and the widespread political unrest that continues to smolder in Kenya. And in my conversations and listening to the presentation with her, honestly, I was incredibly inspired by her positive outlook for the future, despite the constant danger that she and her family face as a result of the work that she does.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of people who are engaged in the work, and Beeman talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I think the title of the episode was Joyful Engagement. But it's always incredible how the people who are engaged in the advocacy work, who are engaged in the activism, can so often find joy and meaning even when things are hard. And so I love that piece of the story. It sounds like you had a really incredible time, but one of the things I'm most interested in, and maybe our listeners are as well, is how does all of this intersect with your work here at Texas Impact and the work our listeners and other advocates here in Texas are doing?
Well, honestly, I've had a lot of people ask me that, because knowing that we are specifically centered around state policy here in Texas, I've had people ask me, what in the world could going to Ghana possibly assist you with here in Texas? And surprisingly, or not, the issues that we face here in Texas, they're not all specifically exclusive to Texas. So we've got migration patterns, environmental issues, LGBTQIA2S+ issues, and health and human rights. They're all concerns across the world, not only here in Texas, but also in Africa. So it contextualized the fact that we're all children of God, like we talked about, and making those connections, personalizing this narrative. It actually allows me to share my story and my experiences with those that are in my circle of influence. You know, telling your story, telling your experiences, that is so much more moving than a lot of speeches and such like that. So, I mean, it really gave me the opportunity to take my experience into those circles of influence that I have and share those with the people that I know. And to be completely honest, isn't that exactly what we want and what we encourage our members here at Texas Impact to do? Just go out, tell your story, because actually nobody else can do that for you. And it was also a reminder of how truly interconnected we all are. It was a reminder of the importance to observe, to listen, and to absorb the perspective of marginalized populations, and the need to embrace our differences and to seek similar priorities. So after returning from Ghana, I sat on a call between representatives from Texas, Ohio, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and we all listened to the Search for Common Ground team in Kenya. They were discussing methods and actions to identify and address imminent threats to peaceful elections. Now, my experience that I had in Ghana actually afforded me the perspective and the understanding of faith traditions and culture there, and how it guided the group's direction for success in that program in Kenya. So just honestly having the engagement there in Ghana with people and embracing the idea of we're completely different from each other, but yet there's so many similarities, and embracing that, diving in and asking the questions, put a whole new perspective into what we were doing here at Texas Impact mere days after my return.
Yeah, I think you're right. I also had a chance to spend some time with folks from around the world as part of the United Methodist General Conference recently. And one of the things that also struck me in that gathering is that we do have so many similarities, like you just said, but the work for justice is the same. It might be different issues that we're facing in our local communities. It might be different issues in our countries. But that work for justice is inherent in our faith traditions and in our calls to action. And it does often comes back to telling our story and working for justice. And I love that. And I love that you had a chance to experience that. I also wonder if anything that happened there helped shape your view of the political climate here in Texas or in the United States.
I think everything, all experiences that we have in one way or another, tend to shape our view of political climate. And
fair.
Honestly, in this contemporary Western world, I'm astounded that we're still fighting issues of race, of gender, and access to healthcare and human rights. And that right there is what pushes me forward in really kind of working towards the policies that we want and moving forward to a future that I really want to have for myself, for my family. And so actually, like many Texans, I've thought about leaving the state to find a residence that provides a sense of security for me and for my family. But then I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine, and they just said, you have to stay. If you don't stay and fight, who will? Who will fight for those who don't have the means or the resources to leave? So I stay. I've made the choice to use my voice and my story and my experiences to help explain how the world looks through my eyes, how I want it to look in the future. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't always have the loudest voice in the room. But when you mess with my kids and you mess with their future, I'll tell you, this mama bear will have something to say. Now, I do have a disclaimer that you don't have to be a biological parent to embrace your mama bear energy. And it just comes down to being willing to be present and say something.
I hear you. I love that. Also, friends, you can email me at scott@texasimpact.org if you want to meet up with me and Heather to go get our Texas Forever tattoos later. I'm just kidding.
Don't mess with Texas.
Heather, really glad that you had the opportunity to have this trip. She is fist pumping, so I think it's happening, friends. So I do want to give you a chance before we close out. Any challenge you'd like to leave with our listeners or any closing thoughts for today?
I know that I've put so much out there. I think just acknowledge where you are in your world, in your presence, and know that you have something to say. I will continuously say to anybody that I speak to, nobody knows your story but you. Very rarely you're going to have many people that are going to jump out there and fight for what it is that you want or you need for your future, especially if they don't know what it is. And so you have to tell people what it is, what you want, and what you need. Also, be willing to listen.
Love that. Great closing thought. Again, Heather, thanks for sharing a part of your story about your trip. I'm again glad that you had that opportunity, and thank you for sharing with our listeners. We'll talk again soon. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation with Heather, and I hope we all spend some time this week considering what our faith is calling us to do during the season of democracy. And I hope we'll all use our voice in whatever way makes sense to share our story and encourage civic engagement. As always, Texas Impact has tools for you. I especially hope everyone is using the Texas Faith Votes resources. You can find those and so much more at texasimpact.org. While you're there, I hope you'll take a moment to sign up to be a member of Texas Impact. Your membership supports this podcast and all of the work to engage Texans of faith to advocate for a more just and equitable Texas. If you have questions about any of it, please reach out. You can reach me at scott@texasimpact.org. And with that, I think it's time to close out this episode. So remember, the world needs Texans of faith active and engaged. So let's get to work.
Weekly Witness is hosted by Scott Atnet, engineered and produced by David Fasalo. Our executive producer is B. Moorhead. The opinions expressed on Weekly Witness are those of Texas Impact and our guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views of our sponsors. Weekly Witness is a product of Texas Impact, people of faith working for justice. Visit us online at texasimpact.org.